and Legal Studies, Center for Criminal Justice Administration WIF, for the 2 days international workshop on the emergent compliance and enforcement of Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act 2013. I would now like to invite Professor Dr. Rashmi Salpekar, Dean, VS LLS BIPS, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Yes. So, good afternoon to you all. I would like to welcome all the dignitaries, the guests, as also my fellow colleagues, my worthy participants of this workshop who have joined from across the country, and have been told that not only from India but from abroad also few participants they have joined for the workshop. And on behalf of my dear students also, I am welcoming you all. I would also like to welcome you all on behalf of our chairperson, Professor R. Venkatarao. Because of some emergency meeting in some of the office, so therefore he is not able to join us at present. But he has conveyed his best wishes to this particular workshop. Our chairman, Dr. S.C. Vats, he has also conveyed best wishes to all of you on this auspicious day, that is Ganesh Chaturthi. Now, Ganesh Chaturthi is an auspicious day. We say that, we do Shri Ganesha of good things. And we always believe that this Ganesha, he stay with us for 10 days. And when he go back, he always take all our sorrows, our problems and difficulties along with him. So therefore, at present, when because of the corona pandemic, we are here together virtually only, but still we are here virtually. So maybe with the blessings of Ganesha, next time we will meet in our campus, lush green Wi-Fi campus of WIPS. WIPS has a very good campus, and my dear students, they are smiling because they must be missing their campus life, as also my fellow colleagues. But nevertheless, we are here to deliberate upon a very important topic, that is prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace. I wish that as Ganesha will be able to take away all our sorrows, why not he is also able to take this particular problem also. This is one of the problem, that is sexual harassment of women at workplace, because of which, even though under Article 14 right to equality is there, Article 21 right to life is there, right to livelihood is there under directive principles of state policy. Under Article 21, many other supporting provisions have also been given. The rights has also been given by our Honorable Supreme Court of India. But still the problem is there. Long back in Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan, few guidelines have been given. After that, an act has also been framed on the same guidelines. Even though many establishments, in fact almost all the establishments, they are having the enough structure and enough bodies to deal with the problem, but still the problem is there. We are not able to eradicate this particular problem just with the help of some kind of legislation. So it means that only the existence of a legislation is not enough. Enough awareness is also required. That kind of strictness is also required for the enforcement. So therefore, my dear students, along with my faculty members, they proposed that, ma'am, we would like to have a workshop on this particular area, in this particular topic, that is on prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace. My dear participants, I'm extremely happy to announce that very worthy and well-known personalities, they will come during these 2 days international workshop to guide us, to enlighten us, as also to share their experiences. I always say that whenever we are dealing with our law students, it is not only that the academicians will be able to give them justice. Always support of bar and bench is equally important. And one more pillar we are having, that is civil society. I'm extremely happy that in this particular platform, it's not only the bar and bench, but we are having representatives of NGOs as well. we are having representatives from that particular area who are really working in this particular topic day and night. I would like to welcome Miss Raina Khatri Tandon, who is founder of Right to Rise. The name is itself is very motivating. That is Right, R-I-G-H-T, to R-I-S-E, Rise, Right to Rise. I would also like to welcome Mr. Hariharan, Senior Advocate, Mr. Vinay Kumar Garg, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, as also Ms. Aprajita Amar, who is a founder of Sexual Harassment Law Compliance Advisory. I welcome to all the participants, as also I'm extremely thankful to the guests who will come over here during these 2 days, and they will they will guide our students and they will guide our participants also. So on behalf of all, I would like to welcome you all. Just one more input I would like to give. In WIPS, in Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies, majority of academicians and professors, they are women. We are having a cell which is required, a statutory cell which is required as per the Act on Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace. And senior professor is heading that that particular cell, that particular committee. And the complete committee we are having just as given under the Act. So if you will visit our campus, you would find that all kind of boards and everything has been, uh, due care has been taken for the same to bring awareness amongst the students. As also the students, they are having this particular topic in their syllabus also. So thus on this topic, we are dealing with variety of students. And also, as I've told you, we are also the employees and we are having a workplace. I'm extremely happy that here at this workplace, our retention, like, it goes like from 1 year till 16 years or so, or 20 years. So thus in this particular atmosphere, when our students, they have come to me with this particular idea, I would have understood that yes, they really would like to do something good for the society as well. So therefore we have organized this particular workshop, international workshop, on the prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace. So once again, thank you so much and welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving forward without any ado, I would like to give a brief about our first speaker of the day. Our first speaker of the day is Ms. Raina Khatri Tandon. Ma'am is the founder and CEO of Right to Rise, an organization that believes for growth and productivity of any organization to happen, the workplace should be gender sensitive and one of equality and respect of both honor. Ma'am is the founding director and chief mentor at Right to Rise, who has developed search strategies for a variety of clients from international brands to small, medium sized business for over a decade. With the quality of being the founder of Right to Rise, Ma'am is a POSH specialist, human rights evangelist, and has also won recognition of a talented and inspiring practitioner who has revolutionized the UK search industries in the UK Search Award. We welcome you, ma'am. I would now like to invite Ms. Rena, ma'am, to deliver the inaugural address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Simrat. Thank you so much for such a warm and welcoming invite. Thank you very much, Vivekananda College. I can't see ma'am's name, but thank you very much, ma'am. You had spoken very sweetly. I think maybe because of the festivity, I seriously felt like Lord Ganesha sits in you, because you're dressed also in that outfit of the Pila sari. I'm also wearing an Indian wear, but for any kind of meeting, I specifically prefer a blazer, because then
Yeah, Miss Raina, kindly unmute yourself. Miss Raina, kindly unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you very much. So I didn't realize that. Thank you very much, Simrat Kaur. Thank you very much, Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies and ma'am. So I was saying that it was very fine and it was very warm and welcoming having the words from all of you. And without any much delay, I would like to thank the entire staff, students, the entire team, the principal of Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies. And it's great to know that The college is following the rules and regulations as per the Act and its litigation. And it's an esteemed honor to be here among the other dignitaries who will be speaking today. So without much delay, I think we'll just go into the session for which we are here for. Of course, you already know from Simrat that I run a foundation, a private limited company called Right to Rise, which is specializing into POSH, POXO, and human rights, into specific skill building programs for different sectors, whether it's organizations, educational institutions, B schools, NGOs, and different areas and sectors of the POSH compliance also. We do the training, certifications, compliance, and audit. So we are basically India's only organization who's ISO certified and approved as per following the government norms of the POSH Act. If there's anything you would always want to reach out, you may do so. So without getting into the PPT first, I'm somebody who likes a very interactive audience, and I would want more and more students, faculty, and everybody present here to probably interact with my chat. So once I share the PPT, I may not be able to look at your chat screen. So are you guys ready to perceive the knowledge? If I could get some kind of yes, I'm not going to be going and telling you, come on guys, and you are there and it's wonderful day and we are the motivational speakers. We're not going to go like that. But if you're ready to perceive all the wonderful knowledge about the Act, I would just like to get a little yes before we start. You can type on the chat or you can put a thumbs up, whatever is on the reactions. Great. So I can see ma'am shaking her head very much.
Yes, we are ready, ma'am. Come on.
Yes, thank you so much for that sweet nod.
Yes, please.
So I have a first question for you. I think you have a wonderful committee. Most students and most professionals know about what is POSH, which is Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act for Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Readdressal 2013. My first question is this act basically for men, women, or both? You may type your answer on the chat, because this might sound silly, but it's a very important question.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We had disabled our chat box.
You have disabled your chat box. Okay, so I don't know how they are going to answer this, but do they have any other ways of doing it?
No, Simrat, is it possible for a minute you can enable
yes,
it?
Yeah, we'll just do that. Yes,
yeah, you can enable for my session, because they'll keep on answering questions, because we are here to basically remove the myth, the biases, the perceptions, and also answer the questions. So there'll be a lot of cases also which I will be telling them, and I will ask their answers. Okay, so interestingly, we are getting loads and loads of answers just pouring in. Okay, somebody says women, Lubna says everyone, Hare says both, it act is for both, just score, superb, okay, for both, Nitya, both, Priyanka, both, Tanisha, Merlin, awesome, you guys are really awesome. So, are we having all legal practitioners here? Are we having all legal practitioners? Yes, all law students? Yes, yes. So the first learning for you, ladies and gentlemen, the law says Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act for women at workplace, prevention, prohibition, readdressal. So we basically don't go in legal profession. The first learning for you is we always go by what's written in the act. We go by facts and figures. We don't go by what we perceive, what biases we have, or what we've heard. So the act very clearly says the act is for women at workplace, specifically women, because when the act was founded in 2013, then it was very clearly said that women were the vulnerable society and not men or transgender or LGBT or queer community, which we have existed today, and we know of them. Of course, they existed before, but उनका नाम नहीं था, हमने सिर्फ चक्का और हिजड़ा ही पता था, लेकिन हमने आज उनको बहुत सारे communities में divide करके रखा है. They have specific areas and specific names, an LGBT, a queer, a transgender. We have different names for these kind of communities, who are people who are from different parts of life, ways of life, different way they have been designed because of their biological systems. But let's understand, this act is only for women and protection of women. Yes. The second question comes is, but we follow for all of them. Yes, many communities, whether they are educational institutes, colleges, be schools, normal schools, and many other organizations, firms, law firms, entrepreneurs, SME, MSME, and unorganized sectors, we create an anti-harassment policy or a sexual harassment committee or an IC committee, gender cell, which is equivalently for both genders, both neutral for men, women, and transgender. Why? Because we believe in maintaining an equal, ethical workspace. We want to bring in equality, inclusiveness, and gender sensitivity. So for that, we say that we want to build a policy which will cover all genders. Yes, we can create that, but while doing the justice in terms of the law, we will only follow as per the norms of the act, because the government has framed only the law act as for the rules to safeguard women, and that too specifically at workplace. Second interesting question. Okay, how do you feel when you read, when you undergo? Some people would have undergone. Before I ask that, has how many of you have undergone sexual harassment? Now, it's a very silly question now, because if I'm going to ask how many of you have undergone, even if people have undergone, they won't accept. But the reason for asking this question is, have you undergone sexual harassment? Yes or no? I'm not going to take any names. You can just put yes or no. What do you think? Have you undergone sexual harassment? Again, you might be thinking, what do I write? But again, this is a very interesting question. Let me tell you, all of us have undergone sexual harassment. Interestingly. Okay, so your perception of what is sexual harassment also will get proven as you undergo this session. Because sexual harassment is not only an interrelation of two bodies. It is not only only when a person touches you, when a person does something which is making you feel uncomfortable. It's not only that, but it's way beyond that. Okay, so we will see how. And if we haven't gone, very good, then we should be even safer, and we should also propagate what we learned today to the other participants. Okay, so let's go and share the screen without any delay, because if I keep on asking questions, I know you guys are super excited. You're all giving me the answers one by one. So here we have the screen right in front of you. Just a moment to tell you that this is Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. That's my name. This is Rena Khatri Tandon. I'm a CHR, which is Certified Human Rights from EDX Harvard. I've also done my law and legal practitioner. I run a private limited company and also a foundation called RKT Foundation, which believes in helping the rural and semi-rural, tribal, and the vulnerable society who can't reach out to us. So that's my details and my email address. We'll also see that at the end of the session, just for your knowledge. Now, yes, this act was actually founded in 2013. Let me ask you, what happened before that? Didn't we not have rape and murder and abuse and harassment and ragging and everything before? Yes, we did have. Okay, so what happened in 2013 and why? Now, what happened was, we already have fundamental rights of the, okay, before I move ahead, I'll just request all the students, all the staff, and all the people who have kids with them. I can see these wonderful drawings. Now, if you move the mouse a little bit here and there, I'll get beautiful figures on my screen, and I love them. But then the people who are listening will get very irritated and it won't be very visible. So I'm just requesting you, keep yourself on mute and avoid moving the mouse so that we don't have any disturbance. And over to you on admitting people in the room. Simran, you can just take care of that, or ma'am or somebody can take care of that, okay? Because yes, I can keep seeing all the waiting room people coming in. So going back to the fundamental rights, we as women are being given a lot of fundamental rights as per the government norms. and the Constitution. Now, many of us don't even know what fundamental rights we have. So when we don't know, then we can't utilize them, or we can't practice them. One of the most important fundamental rights that we have is right of dignity and respect. Most of the fundamental rights are listed for us by Government of India in the POSH Act itself in the beginning. One is Article 40, which is fundamental rights of women to equality. Article 15, which is saying the right to life. Every woman, whether girl, whether boy, whether youth, whether old, whether young, that's fine if you want to keep on doing it. I don't know who's doing it. You might be playful, but believe me, you will not be getting the crux of what we are going ahead. Okay. Thank you so much, and let's move ahead. So the Constitution says the right to life. Right to life means that every woman is being given the right to live in the way she wants. Okay, there's nobody who can come and tell her, including her family, her friends, her children, her relatives, her husband, her father-in-law, mother-in-law, whomsoever you call. Everybody has been given the right to life. Article 19 says that according with the right to life, the second thing is the right to live with dignity and pride. And the fourth one, Article 21, says the right to practice any profession, any trade, any kind of work you want to do, right to practice any business without any caste, creed, race, religion, and any other abuse, which will be free from sexual harassment. Okay, so this is what the four articles say. That's why we had the important POSH Act which came into effect. Now, when we know that these are the fundamental rights which are given to us, how are we going to practice it? So these rights were there earlier also. What happened in 2013 that suddenly we got such a strong, powerful act? I'm sure there's something which happened. So what happened was in 1992, we know of this lady, her name is Banwari Devi or Bhavari Devi. Banwari Devi or Bhavari Devi stayed in a small village in Rajasthan, and that village name was Bhateri. भाटेरी में जब ये रहती थी वो चाइल्ड मैरिजेस को स्टॉप करने का काम करती थी. शी वाज एन इंडियन social dalit worker who used to stop all these child marriages. Now when I'm saying that she used to stop child marriages, obviously in 1992 it's a very big thing. In a small village in Bhateri, Rajasthan, you're suddenly going out and stopping all the child marriages. Nobody generally likes it. Now if I don't like it, then obviously I'll be having a lot of people who will go against me. One day, as she was stopping this child marriage, she went and stopped the child marriage in the nearest village house of the panchayat. Now, you know how panchayat people are, like you watch a lot of Indian movies and all that, you know, the panchayat are really strong people. So having said of the strong people, even today, if you go into a lot of villages in the centralized area of India, into UP, Bihar, Patna, um, a lot of other centralized zones, you'll still find that our panchayat are really strong people, even compared to the government and other. They are more powerful, like the terrorists and all that. So just like our Indian movies, this panchayat comes and says, don't stop the child marriage in my house, please. You can go ahead and do all your work, but yahan pe mat karo. Now, this lady was a strong social Dalit worker. She was like, no, like an activist, she wants to stop it. And because of that, she also went ahead and stopped the child marriage. And the very same night, she was being raped by the panchayat that same night. So as she got raped, the next morning she wanted to go with her husband to file a public PIL into with an FIR in the nearest police station. As she went to file the FIR in the police station, you know, the Indian police sometimes, I think, they want to do their duty, but then they don't, or they can't, because of the lot of peer pressure of the panchayat and this. So I'm not saying that law and order is good throughout India. I'm also not saying that they don't follow their duties, but that place, unofficially, the police were also mixed with the panchayat, and all they did was beaten up her husband very brutally. And the very same night, again, she was gang raped with the panchayat and the police. Now, having said that, I'm sure with 2 times of getting raped, she has no more energy to go ahead and fight against these people. and there were no social media and many preventional strong ways of communicating. So there, in the nearby village, with the word of mouth of what happened to her, there was this strong women group called Vishaka. Vishaka came to her help, and they said that we will file your PIL, the public litigation, into the Supreme Court, and they came up with what is called Vishaka Guidelines. Vishaka Guidelines were framed to say all women should stay with dignity and respect, and that's how the POSH law came into effect. The judgment was made in 1992, but finally, to become an act, it took so many years for our law and justice. And 9th December 2013, the guidelines were being framed that were called POSH Act, which is Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. And the guidelines, because the case was between Vishaka versus the entire state of Rajasthan, so it's called Vishaka versus state of Rajasthan ORS, because Vishaka was fighting for Manvari Devi or Bhaveri Devi, and we were fighting against the Panchayat of the Rajasthan, and so the case was there. And the Vishaka guidelines gave the set of rules which formulated the POSH Act, which said that no woman can undergo any kind of abuse, harassment, unwanted, unwelcome request. Now, what the act was in a very small form. It has been given to you that the act under 2.2 section N, okay, under section 2.2 N said the Sexual Harassment Act is any physical contact and advances, making sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, a demand or request of sexual favors, any other unwelcome physical, verbal, non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. So you can see very clearly that the act comprises of the 5 different things. Now, when we say about the 5 different things, many a times people even don't know that these could have a lot of in-depth analysis. When we say physical contact and advances, sometimes a simple handshake can also yield in an unwanted form of act, and people are very uncomfortable about it. So even when you make a physical contact by shaking a hand, sometimes we have different handshakes, clutching the hand too tight or pressing the hand too tight or shaking too much or pressing on somebody's hand nails or probably going over and ahead and touching with both your hands, one on the shoulder and one on your hand, making an advance too close to a person or trying to get too cozy with a person. Making sexually colored remarks means making any comments about tattoos, making any comments about the shape of a person, the color of a person, the orientation, the sexual orientation. If he is somebody of the other sex and you talk about him either in front or behind him, then that becomes a sexually colored remark. Talking about his mole or tattoo or any colored remark or body mark that they have, any birthmark. Let me tell you, any kind of representation or making a comment or a compliment which makes any person feel uncomfortable, unwanted, and it is not necessary that something what you like the other person should accept, because we all come from different lifestyles, from different backgrounds. At the same times, we have also a generation gap between us. So a person of the 22nd century will be very different from the person like our mother's time or our dadi's time, because these are different generations who think differently. The ethics and values are different. The families from which you come are different. The lifestyles are different. So something which you might say it's okay to say might not be okay for the other. So in short, anything which is unwanted, unwelcome to anybody who's opposite to you, to whom you're making this remark or comment. Thirdly, when we talk about demand or request of sexual favors, we already know a demand or request of sexual favor means either forcefully getting something done by asking or demanding somebody to do it, or requesting for sexual favors, that is requesting for any kind of if you do this, then I would do that. If you're not going to do this, then I'm not going to intern you or confirm you, or you might not be somebody who will be climbing up the ladder in leadership post or getting a higher pay scale. So you better give in to a demand or request for either going out for a coffee or going out for a dinner or even going out for a movie or even for a date or even for a unwanted kind of a sexual intent. So it all depends what is the request of favor and demand and whether it has sexual connotation in it. Many times, even probably shouting with some unwanted words which do not have sexual connotation does not form or frame under sexual harassment. So there is a narrow line between what is harassment and what is sexual harassment. You need to be very clear when you go ahead and give a statement to the IC committee or to the gender committee. Is this sexual harassment? Is what we need to first check on. Most of the times, I think legal practitioners, they make a little mistake there because sometimes what is seen may or may not be true. So having a view of the 360 degrees way of making an investigation is very important because जो कभी कभी दिखता है वो जरूरी नहीं है कि वो सच हो, and sometimes the truth is something what you don't see, what you don't hear, and something which is very deceivable because sometimes even people make up stories or people make up cares or they are making up a situation, and you need to really find out how and where the truth lies, for which you need to be very open and follow the principles of natural justice as per the law, which is important to follow. The next is showing pornography. I'm sure all of you understand that in any kind of workplace, showing pornography, watching pornographic content, or passing the messages, or either on WhatsApp, email, any kind of forwards means you are the owner to that content. Now, for instance, there have been many cases even in colleges today. One person is being trapped because somebody else has passed the message through a WhatsApp, and all I have done is probably pass it to somebody else. Now, if I am passing XYZ's message to EGF, that means it's passing through me. Now, what XYZ has passed is irrelevant, but if you pass it to EGF, that means you become the owner of the message. And if the message is unwanted and unwelcome by this person and he files a complaint against you, let me tell you, you will be taken very seriously under law and you will undergo grievances, you will undergo penalties, you will undergo criminal investigation. If they are seriously things which are going over and above in terms of sexual intent. So let's not do that if we are not sure. Any other unwelcome physical, verbal, non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. So any kind of getting physical, doing a verbal, maybe talking something, singing some songs, making some comments, having sexually made ringtones, touching somebody, tapping somebody, staring at somebody, leering. Leering means glaring at somebody from top to bottom, giving him dirty looks which make him feel uncomfortable. Non-verbal conduct, so maybe making some kind of gestures or remarks or calling for somebody in the room or getting them to come in for a cabin or anything of that kind which is making the person feel fearful of staying there to work. Okay, so far clear, guys? If you can just give me a thumbs up or a yes, because it went really fast. Are you able to get me? Okay, kuch ha na kuch to boliye.
Yes, yes, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, okay. I got some yes, okay. So going back to some terminologies. Now we know that all these things are right or wrong. We need to know some basic terms which law and POSH Act uses in any workplace. So if I'm going to not know about this, then I'm not going to understand why am I called in a room in case I've not done something wrong. And if they start saying you're an aggrieved and you're a respondent, you should ideally know what are they talking. So let's just introduce you to some of the terms. Aggrieved means a person who's undergoing the sexual harassment complaint. So now I am not going to say this is aggrieved woman, because in today's scenario, from the last 2 years, there are only aggrieved men more or aggrieved boys. Nowadays, there are more boys and men who are undergoing sexual harassment rather than the women, because the women and the girls are very, very strong, and they all have become all women empowered. So we have women empowerment on the roll. So women are not getting harassed so much, maybe very few of them, but more of men getting. So aggrieved can be anybody who undergoes sexual harassment. It could be a male, it could be a female. Now, as I'm saying this, I'm also going to tell you one more important thing. Please keep it in your mind. Does sexual harassment happen between male and female or between any genders? What do you think? Okay, any gender, good. So most of you say any gender. So when I'm saying sexual harassment happens between male or female, it can happen between male and female and male and transgender, female and transgender and sheer community, queer community, queer and a lady. It can also happen between two ladies or two men. Now let me tell you how it happens. So many a times I have been doing training for almost 7 to 8 batches in India's top uh, Asian manufacturing plant, which is there in Kolkata. And near Kolkata, that is there is a big manufacturing plant at Tata, and that's at Jamshedpur, the first plant of Asia's biggest manufacturing unit. Done quite a lot of batches there, and let me tell you one thing. As I was doing this gender sensitization session and POSH over there, one of these gentlemen who's about 65 or 69 years old, he sits in the session and he says, मैम आपके सेशन करने के बाद मुझे एक चीज जरूर बतानी है आपको कि मैं एक कॉलेज में प्रोफेसर रहा हूँ जहाँ पे मैं वहाँ पे रिसर्च कर रहा था और मैं वहाँ पे मैंने अपने जिंदगी के 20 साल या 25 साल वहाँ पे खर्च किए. So he says that I have spent 20 to 25 years in a college, in a college teaching and being a great professional teacher. And after that, I wanted to spend the last few years into an corporate sector, and so that's why I'm here. And the time I am here from, people call me a Bihari, a Bengali. You know, we call certain names, O Paji and O Takla, O Bengali, Bihari. Oh, Bengali, oh, Rosogula. So we do these funny names or name calling. Okay, and we also think that we suggest or we take people with these lovely names thinking that, you know, we can associate with them, we like them, we talk with them. It makes them feel comfortable and they feel good about it. But let me tell you, this gentleman said, I've been hearing this statement from the last 8 to 10 years. और मुझे ये शब्द बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं लगता. It hurts me when people call me like that. So you are unintentionally giving somebody a mental depression or trauma, which is causing a lot of harassment and abuse in his mind. Do you get it? So similarly, if you have working in a corporate sector or in a firm or in a college, and you have a person who is a transgender working with you, and you by chance get to know that he is a transgender or an LGBT, and you start talking about his sexual orientation to another friend or in another WhatsApp or in any other group, let me tell you that kind of harassment is also not acceptable. It is very clear, if you cause any kind of abuse or harassment which is causing trouble to another person, it is not at all right and not acceptable. So please don't do that, because even things like this, ideally we've never stopped or never paused in our life and seen whether these kind of people really feel good or bad about it. We just go doing things what we feel is okay, which is not right. So it's important to pause and be aware about the people around you, be empathetic, because POSH is an act which is showing the different traits of a male and a female and what they need to be sympathizing and empathizing with each other for. What is a respondent? A respondent is the opposite person against who the complaint has been made. Workplace, any place the act take place. LCC, which is Local Complaints Committee. IC is the Internal Complaints Committee, which you also call Gender Committee, Student Development Cell in your college, where you have staff and people who can support you to prevent this kind of POSH cases or any kind of abuse or harassment. So who are the members in the IC committee or the internal committee, now called IC? It includes 5 members. You have one external member who's a certified professional. Ideally, he can be either an NGO person working for 5 to 6 years. He could be a legal practitioner, a certified POSH practitioner like Right to Rise, or he can be somebody who's already worked into legal systems, a lawyer, a person who's an advocate, a person who understands the basic nuances of POSH Act, how it happens, what the cases are, how the litigation should happen, how the cases should be handled, how women and children should be handled during these kind of, in case there are some grievances to be taken care, and any women initiative associations. Dwelling place, any place where the act take place. So it could be either so ideally workplace and dwelling place come similarly, but sometimes like any place like a hut or a tent or a company, um, place where people stay or they are put up, that's also called a dwelling place. So they make it generally a place called dwelling place instead of reiterating it like a home. So Kevin, we can't remove the marks on the screen because somebody is going on drawing something. Unfortunately, it's okay. Just we need to focus on the session. So don't worry, just let it go. Some people are a little naughty, but that's fine. Right. So let's understand what is sexual harassment. So
Miss
some
Rena,
examples. Yeah.
yeah, can I say something?
Yes, please, ma'am.
Yeah, actually, these drawings are because of mouse. Because we
Ah, that's
cross
what.
check,
Yes.
yeah, we cross check the participants. They are not having rights. Like my
Yeah.
technical team is taking care of the same. So it is
Okay.
because of the mouse, ma'am.
Okay, we don't have any mouse here. Anyway,
Okay, I will.
let's just leave it. Yeah,
Okay,
let's move
okay.
on. I think that's not a very big thing, so we can
Yeah,
just move
please,
on.
please, please
Yeah,
go ahead. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, ma'am. So let's see what are the examples of sexual harassment. So apologies for telling the participants, you're such lovely participants. So it's not from you, it's basically from the mouse. And today the mouse is playing games. Okay. So interestingly, let's see what are some examples of sexual harassment. So sexual harassment can be physical violence. It can be comments on the worker's appearance, age, private life, displaying sexually explicit, sexually suggestive gestures, comments, stories, physical contact. You can touch a person, pinch, tap, maybe pat him at the back. Sometimes even when people are crying. Okay, I always say when people are crying, please offer them a tissue or a handkerchief and tell them please use this and cool down, or offer them water or offer them something which can help them, but do not touch, because sometimes patting them, leering them, caressing them, touching their back, all those things, you never know what shape and sound it takes. So ideally, don't go into touching a person at all. Keep yourself a little laid back in helping the person on how he can stop crying rather than focusing on any kind of form or touch. Secondly, whistling, singing songs, having ringtones like this Munni Badna Mui and Sheila Ki Jawani and many other sexually connoted terms. Yeah, I know today's Hollywood adds on to the flavor of nonsense, but we need to avoid these kind of ringtones, specifically when we are working in professional areas. Professional workspaces do not allow this kind of conduct, and we are very, very strict on this. POSH has a very important thing, zero tolerance. When we say zero tolerance, it means that sometimes if the crime committed or if the gesture committed is so cruel, we will not be allowing, even sometimes they don't even allow the person to have another say and they might just terminate your services. So please do understand that sometimes something which you don't know might become another, take another form or take another shape of it. So let's not do it. Okay. Repeated social invitations, social media hacking, insults based on the sex of the worker, pornography, shared content, following without intent, following somebody without any intent, following somebody without any knowledge that uh, so sometimes people follow to water coolers and they follow after work, or they want to follow some person for some reason of asking them something, but the other person thinks that why is this person following me or coming behind my back all the time. You, in case you have any questions, guys, hold on to the questions. I will answer all the questions in the end. I will not leave without answering all your queries, so don't worry. We'll continue with this and then we'll answer your queries in the end. So hold on to your questions, and in case we run out of time, you can always write to me also and we can answer all your queries. Okay. So these are some of the examples of harassment which you should know are sexual harassment. Broadly, again, we define it into two: quid pro quo and hostile environment. And quid pro quo means this for that. So if you do this, then you'll get that. If you don't do this, then you know I'm going to take some strict action. A hostile environment is when you're going to be creating an unwanted and uncomfortable workspace for somebody. So if somebody is not giving in to your sexual favors or intent or any kind of favors what you're asking, then they start and create a kind of situation for you where you know you're feeling very laid back and depressed, and always you feel that people are going to attack you with something which is not agreed, or they create this kind of an environment where you're always being cornered out, you're not being given opportunities, you're not being involved in discussions. So that kind of an environment which is uncomfortable and unwelcome, always having some kind of unwanted unwelcomed feeling, will drive you to sexual harassment. In short, impact matters and not intent. We know sexual harassment is unwelcome, unwanted, any sexual nature, subjective and experience. And we know the different forms. But let me tell you, everything is all about the attitude which makes a difference. And remember this one line: impact matters, not intent. Now, what I mean by impact matters, not intent, I'm just going to be telling you a story before we go to the next screen. Are you interested in hearing that? I'll keep asking you this question to see if you're awake and around. So are you there? And are you interested?
Yes, we all are interested. Please go
Great,
ahead.
you're all interested. So, okay, so I am Miss X or Mrs. X, and I'm sitting maybe in an office where I'm in one cubicle. So cubicle is one workspace, and nearby you'll have different workspaces, which is in an open, or maybe a cabin, or maybe I'm sitting in the classroom where I'm sitting here and another girl or another boy is sitting there. Now, if I am actually sitting at one place and going on glaring at a boy or a man who's sitting a little far away from there, okay, I keep staring at this person constantly, keep staring at him, keep staring at him, and keep staring at him for quite some time. What do you think this person will do? What do you think Mr. X will do? क्या करेगा मिस्टर एक्स? अगर मैं उसको घूरती जाऊंगी घूरती जाऊंगी घूरती जाऊंगी, जो बहुत सारे लोग ट्रेन में भी करते हैं. If you are in Mumbai, you will find strangest people. I don't know if it happens in Delhi or in any other major cities who have metros and trains. But in Mumbai, I know that if you go in a train, on the opposite train, if you find many people, they'll keep staring at you with the eyes open and the mouth open, like, and then you have all you need to do is to probably give the same expression and they'll start laughing. But here I am sitting in a workplace, okay, and I'm going on staring at this person constantly. तो वो आदमी क्या करेगा? अगर मैं औरत होके वो आदमी को stare करती जाऊं, I keep staring at that person, what will that person do after some time? I'm waiting for your answers. It's very simple. What will he do? You just give me your answer. There's no right or wrong in this. Okay, I got one message, two message. Ignore. Okay, he might ask, most probably can come to you and ask, most stare back, start laughing, come to you and say, okay, start staring at you. He starts liking you, confront you first, come up to you and ask, first ignore you, get away from that place. Right, if he gets away from the place, again I start staring at him. Okay, if he moves away, okay, again I start staring. Yes, finally, if he's somebody who speaks or somebody who's comfortable speaking, he will come and ask me. If he's not, then he might ask his nearby friend, or he might think something is wrong with him. Let me check my dress, let me check my face, something wrong with me. He'll stare back at you. Yes, if he's a very If he's a very naughty person, or if he's a person up to some kind of nonsense, then he'll stare back at me, or maybe he'll feel this girl is really interested in me, all sorts of things. Now let's understand only one thing. He'll come and ask me, great, Merlin Priscilla has come finally to that line, like everybody else. So this person comes and asks me, why is that you staring at me? Is there something which is funny, or is there something which is causing you a lot of anxiety that you're going on staring at me? And I say, no, I'm not actually staring at you. I'm actually staring at you and thinking about what's happening at my house. Is my maid come? Is my son gone to school? Is my daughter eaten her food? Is my mother-in-law had a medicine? Is my father-in-law gone for a walk in the garden? Is my husband reached his office? And many more things. And what will I do in the evening as I'm leaving home? Will I catch a train? Will I finish my work? And all those things. It's just that you are sitting comfortably there and I'm looking at you and I'm thinking about all this. Now, what I'm coming to telling you here is, it's not important what I am doing, because it is not the intent what I have in my head that I'm thinking. It is the impact which I'm creating on that man which is more important. I am impacting that person by glaring at him and staring at him, which will make him feel uncomfortable. And if he goes and complains to the IC committee or any other gender committee, gender cell, internal committee, whatever names you call it, they're all the same. If he goes and complains that this lady is going on staring at me and makes me feel uncomfortable and I want to file a case of sexual harassment, it is accepted. Here, remember one thing, impact is important, not the intent. It is not important what you intend or what you think. It's important what is the impact you're creating on this person. In sexual harassment, it is very important what impact you create. And it is not negotiable. It is zero tolerance. And depending on what you have done, there will be consequences. So let's understand a little bit of the IC committee who's there inside with us. Yes, the IC committee has 4 members plus 1 external. Since you already have a committee, you know that there will be a presiding officer or a chairperson committee, 1 male member to understand the male point of view, 2 women employees who will understand, also having some legal knowledge or an experience of social work, also handling any kind of sexual harassment cases earlier, and the external member who takes care of all the workings of IC and supporting them in the case handling and case filings. All of them should hold position for not more than 3 years. And if you have a company or a setup which is less than 10 members, you go to LCC, which is a similar framed local complaints committee formed by the government. In the local taluk, district, sector, you have these local complaint committees which operate similar to ICC. But it's just that if your setup, your company, your college, your firm has less than 10 people in the company, they won't have enough people to form the ICC. And it's always better that for such a small setup, you can just approach the LCC who takes care of any case in case it appears, or any kind of similar situations which occurs. One important thing you should know is that this committee which is framed should have more than 50% of the people who are ladies or women. At least 70% should be women, and the rest can be men, for also having the men perspective of it. So the next, I'm going to ask you some scenarios. Let me ask you 2 scenarios and you can answer quickly. So these are situations which I'm just going to create and you can answer whether this is sexual harassment or not. Okay, so there is a gentleman, Mr. Mohan, who's a fictitious character. Mr. Mohan goes to, okay, he is the manager of a company, and or he's probably, because you're in a college, let's understand. So Mr. Mohan is a HOD, and he's sitting in his cabin, and every time there is a break or a lunch, he wants to go and fill his bottle with bottle of water from the water cooler. And every time Miss Manisha goes to the water cooler, he also follows to her and he wants to fill the bottle. So Miss Manisha feels that, every time when she's going to fill the water bottle, he comes behind. So she goes and files a complaint of sexual harassment. So do you think this is sexual harassment? Okay, Prerna says yes. Khyati says yes. Khushbu says yes. Good. Mariam, yes. So most of you say yes. Anybody who says no? Okay, Aditi says no. Rona says no. Okay, guys, this is sexual harassment. For all the people who say no, this is sexual harassment because maybe the intent of the person is yes or no, but you cannot go and fill water at the same time every day, same place, same water cooler all the time. So let's understand the intent over here doesn't matter. The impact creating on that lady is important. And if the person is doing intentionally, then he does it every day. So please have some state of mind on how you are investigating and what you are thinking when you are. Of course, you will hear out both the parties equally. As per the laws of natural justice, you need to give a equal hearing to both of them and then decide. But here, impact matters more than intent is what is getting proved. Let me give you one more situation. Suppose Miss X, who is working at the company reception, is working there continuously, and there is this courier boy who keeps coming from Blue Dart every day to drop off couriers. Every day he comes, he keeps on glaring at her, and he asks for coffee every time he comes. So coffee has been given. But as he's drinking coffee, he keeps on staring at her, and after a few days, he starts bringing these goodies and gifts. And he says, "Why don't you come out with me for a coffee?" She says, "No." And he keeps pursuing her. So is this sexual harassment? Okay, so I've got the answers. So many of them say yes. So it is sexual harassment and many more. So there are similar kind of things. But let me tell you one thing. If there are many situations which I learn from many companies when I go and do their sexual harassment sessions in their companies, nowadays a lot of them happening, and most of them having interns or people who are just started as newcomers and trainees from colleges, third year college students, fourth year college students, second year college students who are just coming to do either internship or they've started working in the company itself. And when we do POSH awareness sessions there, two things you need to understand. Don't simply go running to the company that this is POSH and this is awareness without understanding what is POSH. When you do sign up a case that this person is harassing me, it's a serious offense. Let me tell you, you are going and putting a black mark on your name and that person's name, telling him that he has seriously done something wrong with you. So public humiliation, dismissal, family breakup, office pervert, loss of friends, isolation, fear, powerless. As much as we say you should come and file the case of sexual harassment if it's a serious crime, yes, you should, because then the perpetrator is getting the right form of punishment or the right kind of counseling or the right kind of justice that he needs to stay away from people and stop doing abuse, harassment, and crime. And that is what we are here for, to ethically work for. But if he's just probably giving you a small gali like idiot, fool, all those, that doesn't come under sexual harassment. Or somebody is misbehaving, like you have a boss who keeps his foot up all the time you're walking into the cabin, then that's mere harassment and not sexual harassment. So you need to go and file a complaint to the HR saying that this is the so and so person is harassing me, and I want to take action against code of conduct and harassment, but not sexual harassment, not POSH. So there is a very great difference, sometimes a narrow line, which you need to figure out whether it is harassment or sexual harassment. Okay. And finally, is this act mandatory? Yes, it's mandatory. Many people come back and say, is it mandatory or not mandatory? I say it is mandatory by law. It is mandatory and made by government. If you don't follow it, there are penalties. There are fines of up to 50,000 rupees for organizations, for colleges, for other people. And what is the duty of the employer? For here, in a college, your college becomes the employer. They have to follow, create awareness programs. They have to undergo this creating the IC committee. They have to take care of all the people understanding and communicating the policy and who are the members. They should create a sensitive environment, educate the people, assist the aggrieved, whether it is man or woman, constitute and empower the IC committee, treat sexual harassment as a misconduct, and finally follow your compliance. where Right to Rise also does compliance, auditing. We are also into certification programs. So anybody wants to get certified, being a POSH practitioner, a POSH enabler, a POSH IC committee person, also doing a lot of skill development for IC people so that they know how to run the IC committee. So if any of these things are there, you can always reach out to us. Right to Rise will help you. And yes, this is a mandatory compliance. If you have not done it, please get it done. If you don't have your IC committee or your policy in place, please keep getting it done from the right people. Last but not the least, what to do if you're sexually harassed. So if you're sexually harassed, all you need to do is go and consult your employee handbook or your committee handbook or your gender committee book or something where they say you need to write down what happened, where happened, with whom it happened, time, date, and if were there witnesses or anything. Speak to the HR, speak to the IC committee, speak to your gender cell, speak to your student cell, either your principal, either your HOD, either your gender committee head, presiding officer, give everything in writing and then they should take action. Yeah, there are some timelines. The most important timelines is every complaint should come between 90 days and every complaint within 90 days of the last incident which has occurred, and all sexual harassment complaints come in should be sorted within 90 days. The rest regarding the appeal, yes, if you want to make an appeal in the court, you can make it within 60 days. And finally, we are at the end of the session. In case you don't follow these compliances, you have penalties, you have grievances, you have penalty of up to 50,000 rupees. If you constantly don't follow your IC committee, frame your IC committee, constitute an IC, you have punishments of 3 years to maximum 7 years, and any breach of increased repetition, then you might have punishment, cancellation, withdrawal, or even closure of your registered business. So that's about it. Thank you very much. We are at the end of the session. If you really found value, you can connect with us. We are there on social media, on all Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm Mrs. Rena Khatri Tandon, and also our initiatives Right to Rise and RKT Foundation. If you want to be a volunteer, if you want to get to know more programs, you want to get certified. Also, I'd want to share, we started our internship academy 2 months ago, and we finished up with three batches. I think the next batch is starting on September 5th. So if any students want to intern with us, then you can reach out to us. I think Simrat has already, I've just given her the email address to mail me the profile and the resume. If you're interested, you can intern with us and learn how to become tech savvy into this new pandemic world where we are going to get so open to different organizations and you're going to be open into a new environment. So let's work towards this ethical, beautiful, safe workspaces. Thank you so much for having me and hearing me. Now I'm there for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an informative session. With your due permission, we would like to open the session for the questions.
Yes, the sessions are open for the questions. All over to you.
Oh, the first question that we have is there any law for men who are being falsely accused for sexual harassment?
Right. So unfortunately, we don't have any act for men. Yes, if you're whether you're there in college or whether you're there in an organization, let me tell you that POSH, most companies, most setups have an anti-harassment policy, which is covering both men and women and other genders. But unless until it's a very serious offense that you have been constantly abused by a lady, either by a false allegation or either by a malicious conduct or either some kind of a trap, then you can file an FIR and the police takes it under code of conduct and harassment. Every company has its own service rules. So you will be taken under that and they take strict action. But if it is something which is very minor, like the lady's gone crazy and she's just behind you and she's just wanting to say, no, I just want to be with you and all that. So we just try to settle them down by counseling them and sending them to specific counselors and advising them and telling them that this is not acceptable. So I think that should do. because some people just need to be guided on the right way, and sometimes they have not been guided in their childhood. So they just need to do that now and make them know that, this is not something which is acceptable in workplaces. You're here to work. You're not here to have boyfriends and girlfriends. You're not here to have a canteen time or a garden time, because most people who are new need to adapt to the environment, because you'll be having people who are 70 years, you'll be having people who are 20 years of experience in the same company, who are very much the whole and soul of the company because they've spent a lot of time. You'll have people who are like your mom and dad, people who are working there because they think differently, and you also have your generation. So you will have people of different biases, perceptions, lifestyles, and you cannot think what they are thinking. But all I can say is that you need to understand you're here to work and not to do anything else. Okay. Thank you,
Uh,
Priyanshi. Thank you, Parvati ji. Kevin, thank you. Yes.
Moving forward with the second question, how can we make sure that our actions does not give the other person any wrong idea of our intention?
How can we understand the action doesn't what?
How can we understand or make sure that our action does not give other person any wrong idea of our intention?
Very good question. Who's asked this question? Is it a lady or a guy? I want to know that. Is it a boy or a girl?
Did not mention their name.
Okay, you've not mentioned your name. So how, I'll reiterate the question. The question is a very, very, very thoughtful question. How do I know that I'm not giving a wrong impression? Now, when a person, the best thing is when I shake hands with a person who's trying to press my arms, I need to be very open and assertive that this is not acceptable by me. So I will go ahead and tell my boss or my teacher or my HOD or anybody or my friend that thank you very much for such a warm handshake, but I don't appreciate this kind of a handshake. I don't come from this kind of a background. Don't take advantage of me. You need to be vocal. You need to open your mouth, girls. Secondly, if boys are getting raped by the silly girls, then boys, you need to just talk to the girl and tell her, this is not the place I want to be. There are many boys who come up to me crying, ma'am, I have this girl who's there in my class who's traveling with me either by a bus or by a share auto or by a rickshaw or by a car or by a cab, and all the time she's over me. Either she's hugging me or she's touching me or she's making me feel uncomfortable, and I can't say. And I ask them, why don't you go and tell your HOD or your IC committee member or your gender cell or your teacher or your principal or your parents? The same answer is there. Ma'am, we are very scared. Who's going to believe us? Who's going to agree to us? Who's going to listen to us? Because we don't have any proof. Why will people believe on men or boys? People will believe on you if you have proof, and there are ways and means of getting that. But first, be vocal that this is not something you like. And if you are also in a group and you become attacked by this groupism, because there are many youth today who are in hostels. If you are a part of a group who's going to be under harassment and bullying and you do something wrong, let me tell you, being a part of this, even not doing anything, you will go into jail. That's why many people have been rusticated from their college, because they are just quiet observers even if they don't do anything. So start being vocal. And I think you have enough movies which tell you no is no. I don't need to take the names of the movies. You have watched umpteen number of Bollywood movies. You are inspired by a number of Hollywood and Bollywood movies which say sexual harassment is not acceptable. So when person says no, whether it's a boy or a girl, you're supposed to understand that it really means no and to stop. And if you are constantly getting abused, then you should go and file a complaint. You should take action. Even if it is on cyber, even if it is on Facebook, even if it's on Twitter, if it's on Instagram, report it, harass it. You have cybercrime, you have Facebook reporting, 3 times of reporting on the Facebook panel, straight away that name will be going to the police station. And these are things which are happening day in and day out. If it's not happening, please take legal action. Otherwise, get the right people and they will get to help you. Okay. So yeah, any more?
Ma'am, due to paucity of time, not all questions can be answered, and
No
apologies to
problem.
all
I'm
the
just writing my
participants.
details on the chat. I am Mrs. Rena Khatri Tandon along with the email address and phone number. If you want to reach out, you can reach out, or you can always send the questions to Simran and the staff and the team of Vivekananda College. I'm sure they'll reach out to me and send it to me. I'll answer all of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to call Ms. Loveleen Sharma, Assistant Professor, VSLLS WIPS, to deliver the word of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Simrat. Good evening to the dignitaries and participants. On behalf of VSLLS and fraternity of the institution, I extend my most sincere thanks to Miss Rena ma'am, who spared time from her busy schedule to grace this session. Today we have an opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will surely be going to encourage us in the future. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us an insight about the way things happen around us and how one can deal with it. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. My gratitude to you for gracing the session and sharing your opinion. I would like to thank all the respected representatives who have blessed us with their presence. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a great honor, and thank you, Loveleen ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I did not know the name of the first ma'am. Can I get her name, please?
Yeah, my
No,
name is Rashmi Salpekar.
Okay, thank you, Rashmi ma'am.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Loveleen
Nice to
ma'am.
meet you.
And
Thank
Welcome, ma'am.
seriously, thank you, Dilse. Thank you, Simrat,
Thank you,
for
ma'am.
having me here. And lots of regards to Swami Vivekananda College Institute of Law and the principal ma'am. Great regards. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
thank
having
ma'am.
you.
me.
I would now like Adhar to moderate the session. Over to you, Adhar.
Moving forward with our second speaker of the day, Mr. N. Hariharan, Senior Advocate. Sir completed his degree in law from the Faculty of Law at the University of Delhi. With no family background in law, he enrolled at the Delhi Bar in 1987 and over the last 33 years has cemented his presence on the criminal side of the legal practice. For his contribution to the practice and development of criminal law, the Delhi High Court designated Sir as a senior advocate in 2013. As an advocate for civil liberties and individual rights, he represented clients in the Sura Hooch tragedy cases where over 200 people lost their lives due to consumption of illicit liquor. As a specialist in criminal matters, he represented clients in the famous Shivani Bhatnagar murder case and the Tehelka case in the early 2000s. He also appeared as special counsel for Salman Khan's prosecution in the Black Buck shooting case. Later in the decade, he defended Rajya Sabha MP Mr. Amar Singh in the cash for vote scam. Appearing for Reliance, he secured acquittals in the 2G spectrum allocation matter. Besides representing and securing the discharge for Santosh Bagrodia, the erstwhile Minister of Coal in the coal scam matter, Sir also represented Suresh Kalmadi and continues to represent others in the CWG scam matters. Presently, Mr. Hari Haran represents former Union Home Minister and current Rajya Sabha MP Mr. P. Chidambaram and former Lok Sabha MP Mr. Naveen Jindal. He also appears for Delhi CM Arvind Kejriwal, Minister of Health for Delhi Satyendra Jain, and MLA Somnath Bharti, among other members of the current Delhi administration. We welcome you, sir. I would now like to invite Mr. N. Hariharan, sir, to deliver his views on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, sure.
Good evening to all of you.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
I especially thank this university to having invited me to present this lecture. I am indebted to Professor Venkatarao, the patron in chief, Professor T.V. Subbarao, the patron, Professor Rashmi Salpekar, the Dean of the college, and a special mention and thanks to Chesta Daya. But for her, I wouldn't have been here. It was her insistence that brought me here on this forum. Anyway, since we are over with the initial introductions, my introduction was a little unnecessary. Let me straight away come to the topic. What is interesting when I was hearing what was being introduced is that my designation as a senior coincides with the enactment of this legislation, 2013. Just mark the words, mark the dates. 2013, this act came into force, and that is the year I got designated. Now, having said that, as far as the issue is concerned, I would, in fact, try to begin this lecture by going back a little in relation to the kind of status of the women in our society have enjoyed over a period of time. We look at the inequity in terms of gender inequality. This is more or less, when you look at it from the point of view of mythology, even from that point of time, somehow we have been unfair to 50% of what constitutes our population today, which happen to be women. We are also unfair in terms of bringing a level playing field as far as these people are concerned. From times immemorial, it has been a patriarchal setup, and this patriarchal setup over a period of time has got ingrained in our mindsets. And it is this patriarchal setup to a great extent which has brought in this situation of iniquity. The first instance that comes to my mind, even we go back to even mythology for that matter, the Ramayana. Take the position of Sita, for instance. Or even before Sita, take the position of Surpanakha. She got her nose chopped off because she made a proposal and showed interest in Lakshmana, which resulted in the abduction of Sita. And it not only led to the abduction of Sita, it then thereafter, after the coronation of Rama, when he comes back, it saw to the banishment of Sita because somebody pointed out saying this, that she was not chaste when she was there. Look at the kind of iniquity which is coming in, which is perpetrated from mythology itself. Let us go to the Mahabharata for a minute. The biggest instance in Mahabharata which stands out starkly is the disrobing of Draupadi in that hall, where all the elders of the community were there, where all the kings and so-called gods were sitting. She is disrobed in public. And a war ensues in relation to that. Look at the case of Gandhari for a minute. From a feminist point of view, I would like to look at it from that point of view. That here is a case of injustice being done. It is said that Bhishma was on the lookout for brides for Pandu and Dhritarashtra. He caught hold of Kunti for Pandu, and he coerced the Gandhara king to give Gandhari to Dhritarashtra, who was a blind man, against her will. Now, what was the mode of protest that was available then? The mode of protest was, from a feminist point of view, Gandhari decided to keep herself blindfold for an entire lifetime. That blindfolding herself was a protest against that kind of a scenario. So you look at it from the point of view of what is coming down, this patriarchy which is flowing in each of these events and coming down, the injustice which is coming down, which manifests itself into a patriarchal society. The patriarchal society which lays down norms that this is the manner in which women have to be treated. Manusmriti, for instance, talks about the fact that Shudras and women ought to be beaten. So this patriarchal setup which has got ingrained in us over a period of time has resulted in this weird mindset that these are the norms which women should adhere to. If these norms are not adhered to, she is licentious, she is available. And therefore, we see instances of this kind proliferating over a period of time. Post-independence, of course, I cannot go through the entire gamut, but I'm just trying to succinctly show to your people a different picture. The framers of our constitution, at the time when the constitution was framed, decided that yes, there are iniquities in our society, and those iniquities have to be removed. And in order to remove the said iniquities, they brought in certain provisions. They legislated certain provisions. At the time when the constitution was made, Article 14, for instance, we talked about right to equality. Within it, Article 15, which talked about the fact that the state will endeavor to see that there will be no discrimination based on caste, creed, sex, place of birth. So sex was one of the criterias, which was the constitution makers were cognizant of this fact that there was discrimination. And this discrimination needs to be rectified by way of bringing in Article 15. Not only that, there are other provisions also in the constitution which talk about dignities in terms of women. If you go to the constitution, back to the constitution, there are various provisions which I will refer to during the course of this lecture. Fundamental duties, 51A onwards, where the constitution enjoins a fundamental duty on us to respect women and their dignity. So keeping all this in mind, and also the progress which the country over a period of time in terms of industrialization and in terms of liberalization and all other relations that happened, saw women rubbing shoulders man to man at various workplaces. Not only workplaces, whether it be in terms of media, whether it be in terms of cinema, whether it be in terms of sport, whether it be in terms of practicing law, working in organizations. It saw the influx of women over a period of time as education reached to them, and certain mores started breaking down, and conflicts started happening between the patriarchal mode of thinking and the aspirations which the women were aspiring for over a period of time. And this platforms where commonality came in, there created fertile situations for situations which made it uncomfortable for women to work, where men were required to make space. That space was not being made. In fact, impediments were being created. And in fact, the fact that the women started moving out of their homes and they started working there created a kind of availability for men in a way, that here was a chance for us as men to create a situation where there was the availability of women. And with this patriarchal mindset that she has come out of her home, so she's available, offenses started happening. The workplace started becoming unsafe. And I am not talking only in terms of corporate setups. I am talking about all places where women find employment. And why I am saying all this? Because this ultimately, this need, this pressing need was felt, especially when a woman would come home being subjected to harassment of some kind, unable to express herself, bottling it into herself, creating a situation which affected her psychologically and mentally, unable to say that to her own parents, caught in the patriarchal setup, caught in a concept where, I will be shamed if I say this. So the victim becoming the persecuted. So it created all kinds of problems. And the problems slowly started festering over a period of time, expressed here and there in occasional cases, where cases went beyond harassment, crossed the line, and could be defined as assault. When I say sexual assault has been specifically defined. when you have those earlier definitions in relation to 354 of the IPC and then thereafter 376. Those were the days when I used to do trials at that point of time, where defenses which now are not available, considering the fact that the scenario has changed. At that point of time, one of the first defenses which a person would take in a 376 trial was that the woman is of a loose character. Her previous character would be assailed, which really had nothing to do essentially with the event in question. The Supreme Court over a period of time also realized this and changed these defenses, did not allow these defenses to be taken. So the first thing that a trial lawyer would try and do is assail the character of the woman, make her uncomfortable, make it look as if she was responsible for the crime. In a searching cross-examination, in a cross-examination which would not only be searching, which would be embarrassing also. So this was the manner in which the entire issues were tackled, because there was a patriarchy behind it, which is still there. It is not gone as yet. It will take time. However, coming back to the subject, in 1992, an incident happened. You see, in our country, everything is based on a trigger. There has to be a trigger. Some kind of a case will come, some kind of a situation will happen which will trigger the legislature or the judiciary or we amongst the legal system from our slumber. Otherwise, we are used to sleeping. We will sleep. Wait for something to happen which will jolt the conscience of everybody. And then we will start acting. So this kind of a scenario happened in 1992 in a remote village in Rajasthan. Rajasthan government at that point of time had women's development programs in place. And these women's development programs which were in place, they had to recruit women as sathins to try and bring about a change in the societal mindset. Rajasthan was a place, I remember during my days, there was an incident where a sati incident happened. Despite the fact that sati was banned for a very long time, an incident of sati also happened, and there was a big furor in relation to it in my days when I was in school. Here in 1992, there was a sathin by the name of Bhavari Devi. Now, Bhavari Devi and the Raja was essentially trying to promote a program of the government wherein the government was cognizant of the fact that child marriages were prevalent in Rajasthan. So in the village where Bhavari Devi was associated, there was a scenario where a 1-year-old girl child was being given off in marriage by her parents to someone of around the same age who was also a child. So she had protested in relation to that. And she had tried to create an awareness against this kind of a practice, which was not taken very well by the villagers. They thought that it was a challenge to their tradition. So they not only opposed Bhavari Devi's interference in relation to the affairs, but 4 or 5 days later, 5 or 6 of those villagers decided to rape Bhavari Devi in the presence of her husband. And when this happened, it resulted into a furor. There was the registration of a case, albeit late. The Rajasthan government reacted late at that point of time. A late registration of a case happened. And a trial ensued. And interestingly, the prosecution dragged its feet as far as the trial was concerned. And bizarrely, the trial court acquitted the accused persons. Now, this was the kind of scenario which shook the conscience of an NGO by the name of Vishakha. Now, all of you are aware of this case. It has now become a landmark case in many ways. I will now discuss thereafter as to how it becomes a landmark. So this voluntary organization called Vishakha decided to pick up this issue and move the Supreme Court by way of an Article 32 petition, wherein they tried to bring this by way of a class action. All of you must have been seeing serials these days because of COVID. All these legal serials that you see in America, a lot of class action suits come there. In India, class action suits are not the calling of the day, though it will with a period of time. But this writ was by way of a class action. And what did this writ seek? Because what happened to Babri Devi there happened to her because of the fact that her work necessitated her presence in that village. Her work necessitated her interaction with the villagers at that point of time. And her work necessitated her protest and her presence in a hostile environment, in an environment which was not safe in terms of a work environment. So essentially, what was it doing? It was essentially creating a situation where her Article 21 rights of right to life and liberty, right to life essentially, was getting affected. Because right to life requires within it, inbuilt within it, that right to find an expression should have the aspect of a safe environment, number one, to begin with. Not only that, not only a safe environment does it entail, it also envisages within itself a right to dignity, a basic human dignity demands. You don't expect going to work, to your workplace, being sexually harassed or getting raped, which is essentially affecting your right to dignity. Your dignity, basic dignity is getting affected. So to that extent, it was a challenge in relation to Article 21. It was also a class action which was brought on behalf of all the women of this country that they are not safe in their work environments. Interestingly, there was a convention when 1980, kindly note the period. In 1980, there was an international convention wherein the Committee of Nations got together, and in a convention, they defined the aspects of sexual harassment. They defined that this was a world phenomena. This was not only a phenomena which was endemic to our country, it was a phenomena which basically was something which was seen world over. And a need was felt that women should be given a safe environment in order to be dignified in terms of leading their life, because right to life and right to work are also connected. It's a basic human right. Right to work is a basic human right. It is connected to right to life. And when it is connected to right to life, and especially with women, they have a right to work and they have a right to a safe environment. This was recognized way back in 1980 in an international convention. And India was a signatory in 1980 to that convention. And interestingly, from 1980 till Vishaka, 1993, mind you, the legislature slept. There was no law in place. You sign an international convention in 1980 and you sleep over it, because it is uncomfortable to the patriarchal setup. You sleep over it. Your constituencies will get affected. You sleep over it. But once the trigger happens, it comes up before the Supreme Court. Now, what does the Supreme Court do? Because there is no law in place. And here is a writ petition which comes, which is seeking a class action. That look, 50% of our population, people who gave birth to us, are not safe in their working environments. And what can be more a greater example than what happened to Babri Devi? So the writ came by way of Article 19 as well. Because right, Article 19, all of you know, is a fundamental right which gives you the right to practice and profess any trade or profession or calling. That is getting affected. If your work environment is not safe, your rights are abridged. You will not choose to go and work there. For reasons, not because you are not interested in the work, but for reasons which are beyond your control, for reasons because the state has failed to provide you that security at that point of time. So it was a challenge in relation to 19 and as well as 14 and 15, because as far as men are concerned, their environments are safe and secure. But there is discrimination in terms of women as far as 15 is concerned. So the class action demanded that our rights are getting violated, not once, but on a day-to-day basis. And you are supposed to be the guardians, the sentinels, as far as our protection is concerned, as far as protecting our individual rights are concerned. So we appeal to you by way of a mandamus. Issue directions, please, and see that something is done. So what did the Supreme Court do? The Supreme Court responded to the call and responded to it in a very dramatic fashion. That is why I say that Vishaka happens to be a watershed judgment in many ways. It's a watershed judgment. Why? Because it filled up what I would term as a void which was created by inactivity of the legislature. Its activism went to the extent that it said that if the legislature will not act, then we will act, we will enact the law to a certain extent. Though this aspect is being criticized, to my mind, it is a watershed. And how did the Supreme Court do it? It is also a very interesting method by which it did. What it did was, it said that, look, as far as international law, treaties, and obligations are concerned, in the Constitution itself, we have given place to it. When we read probably 51C, if I am not mistaken, if you read 51C, 51C says that we will honor international treaties and obligations. So when we have signed an international treaty and we have talked about the said treaty, and there is no municipal law in relation to it, meaning there is no domestic law, wherein the legislature has provided for an enactment which would protect the rights of women from harassment in workplaces. There is no such law in place. So there is no municipal law. And here is an international convention which you have been a signatory to. Not only this, thereafter again, this particular convention got ratified. It was signed in 1980. It got ratified in 1993, before this judgment was passed. Yet there was no law in place. So what the Supreme Court did, the Supreme Court said that if there is an international convention or treaty which does not come in the way of Part 3 of the Constitution. Part 3 is that part of the Constitution which comprises the fundamental rights. Now, if you go to Article 13 specifically says that no law can be made which will abridge or take away anything which is expressed in Part 3 of the Constitution, which means the fundamental rights. So, fundamental rights to a certain extent were given a kind of a sanctity. So law which was made abridging or contravening fundamental rights would be void to that extent. Of course, many developments happened in relation to that over a period of time. Well, now, this is the lecture which doesn't deal with that, but broadly speaking, in relation to this. So what the Supreme Court said, that here is an international treaty and convention which we have signed, and that treaty or convention does not contravene Part 3. It is not in violation of Part 3, the fundamental rights chapter of the Constitution. In fact, adhering to the treaty would enrich the said right in many ways. It will in fact create a situation where the fulfillment of that right would be possible. Because Article 15 says that there will be no discrimination based on sex. Various provisions of the Constitution talk about upholding the dignity of Indian women. So in a way, this legislation, if it is not there, and if the Supreme Court imparts this or brings this on from the International Convention, it is very much within its rights to do so. So they essentially interpreted it in that fashion, that this is auguring Article 15. This is in fact promoting this right, and there is no municipal law in the field. When there is no municipal law in the field, we as judges, they also drew upon a convention in 1995 which happened in relation to the Law Asia judges. There was a Law Asia judges conference which was attended by all the chief justices of the Asian region and the Pacific region, which talked about certain aspects as to how the judiciary should function. And one of the aspects in that convention, which was also signed by the chief justice of this country, was this: that there will be an endeavor by the judiciary to promote human rights. Now, here was a situation which also entailed the promotion of human rights. So they drew from that convention as well. And drawing from both the conventions, they decided that yes, we need to bring in guidelines. Because there is no legislation as such, we need to bring in guidelines. And those guidelines will be, as per Article 141 of the Constitution, the law of the land, and it will be enforceable. So doing thus, what the Supreme Court did, it brought in those guidelines, which you now, when you read the Vishaka judgment, you will see those guidelines in place. Now, what were those guidelines? Essentially, if you look at the guidelines, even the definition of sexual harassment, which you see today in the Act, in that guideline, what was stated in the convention was imported as a guideline by the Supreme Court. And what was stated by the Supreme Court has thereafter been incorporated by way of a legislation, which you now know as the Sexual Harassment Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. So interestingly, in 1993, Vishaka's judgment brought in these guidelines because there was no domestic law in place. And this was the manner in which it was done, which I just elucidated to you. This judgment is also a watershed because of one another thing. There is a concept in law which came into vogue after this judgment, and that is this concept of horizontal classification. In a way, there is an application of this law horizontally. Why do I say horizontally? Because all fundamental rights essentially are against the state. Your actions lie against the state. As an individual, you feel that your fundamental rights are abridged. You bring an action against the state in relation to that abridgment of fundamental rights. But here is a scenario where the Supreme Court said that this will be available against individual persons also. So private institutions were also brought into the fray. You just now heard a very interesting talk, which was given by the previous speaker, Ms. Raina. Why is she here? She is here because of Vishaka. Horizontally, the Supreme Court brought them there. That if you are a private enterprise, it doesn't give you the freedom to do whatever you want. You also are enjoined to provide a safe working environment for women, an environment where they will work with dignity. So this was what was achieved by Vishaka. That is why I say Vishaka is a watershed in many ways. It brought in this horizontal aspect, which was not there earlier. There is going to be a lot of debate on that as to whether the Supreme Court could have done all this, whether it could have legislated like this, stepped into the domain of legislation. There's an entire set of jurisprudence on that which differs with this, with what the Supreme Court did. Because how the Supreme Court also, if you interestingly look at it, it is very interesting. You see, the Constitution, when you look into the Constitution, there is a provision, Section 73. Now, what does 73 say? 73 says that the executive power will be coterminous with wherever the parliament has the power to legislate, the power of the executive will be coterminous with it. So that executive can also make law, which was interpreted by the Supreme Court, in those scenarios where the parliament does not. Till such time that the parliament does not make that law, the executive is entitled to make the law because its power runs coterminous at that point of time. When we read 73, that is the import which 73 gives. So what did the Supreme Court do? The Supreme Court said that the executive could have brought in laws to protect women and wait for the parliament to enact law which will curb this evil. But the executive also did not act. So therefore the Supreme Court said that these powers were available. And when these powers were available and you do not act under an mandamus, we will give you a direction by way of guidelines. This will be the law of the land, which you will be enjoined to enforce. So this debate, of course, will carry on. But this judgment happens to be a watermark, a watershed, which I would recommend each one of you children to go through it very carefully, because it has got various aspects and facets to it. Of course, the element of upholding the fundamental right in terms of 14 and 15 is there. It is talking about protection, but it is talking about other things also. How that power is to be used, how purposive interpretation. There is something in law, there is something in constitutional law called purposive interpretation of statutes. How the Supreme Court purposively interpreted that entire situation. This is a classic example where there was a complete legislative void. How that void was filled up purposively to achieve a purpose, to limit the evil, to curb the evil of sexual harassment. How it was done by the Supreme Court, this is a classic example. And that is why I say that Vishaka is a watershed. Now, having dealt with Vishaka, you see, 1993 Vishaka comes in, guidelines come in, even private institutions are told to adhere with guidelines. But did it really happen? Let us ask that question again. Did all this really happen? Because 1993 this judgment came, we had to wait for another 10 years. 2013, you had to wait for the designation of Hariharan. Hariharan gets designated in 2013 and the judgment comes in 2013, this legislation. Why 10 years? Why did the legislature sleep for 10 years thereafter also, despite the fact that the Supreme Court rapped them on their knuckles, told them, wake up from your slumber, do something, but another 10 years go by. So if you look at it, 1980 to 2013, how many years have gone by? How many years have gone by? Now, what happened? Very interestingly, why in 2013? What was it that made them awake from this slumber? The answer was Nirbhaya. Nirbhaya happened in 2012, December 2012. It shocked the conscience of everybody. It forced the legislatures to wake up that what is happening in this land. And Nirbhaya was not simply a rape case. Look at Nirbhaya carefully. What was Nirbhaya? Nirbhaya was again a situation where a journalist was returning from her place of work. Late hours are maintained by journalists because their jobs are such. I myself was one before I joined the profession. I used to do night shifts. I used to come home in the night. But I was secure because nobody would molest me. You see? So I could come down walking, I could catch a bus, I could catch a rickshaw, I could ask for a lift. But imagine the plight of a woman journalist who finishes a night shift and comes at the night. So in a way, this also related to and was attenuated to her place of work. Where was that safety measure which was provided to her? The state failed in its entire endeavor, despite the fact that there was a direction from the Supreme Court, there were guidelines from the Supreme Court. Were those guidelines effective? Was a safe working environment provided to her? This is a moot question which needs to be asked, because in the din of the offense of rape and the din of getting them convicted, we have lost sight of this basic issue. That did the concerned organization and did the state fail in providing that safe working environment to that girl? When you ask that question, the answer is no. In fact, the state should also be made liable for the happening of that incident. And so should the newspaper in which she worked. What was preventing the newspaper in sending her home in their own vehicle? I remember even that used to be there in place in those days. When night shifts were over, journalists used to be sent home by the staff car. When we happened to miss it, we stood here and there drinking tea and smoking cigarettes. The car went off and we had to go on our own. That's a different issue. But here, where was that responsibility which is enjoined on the employer and which is enjoined on the state? Where was that brought in place? So therefore, I say that in India, still class action as such is yet to develop. It happens sporadically here and there, but it is yet to be organized, and to all you children who are coming into the profession here on, this is an opportunity for you. Look at for these class action situations. Try and change the environment by being more proactive. This is an opportunity for all of you. Now, having said this, so Nirbhaya came in, and what did it do? It brought a knee-jerk reaction immediately. The legislatures woke up. They said, oh, this legislation needs to be passed, and they brought in this legislation at the drop of a hat. And what is the legislation? The legislation is nothing. The legislation is, in a way, a reiteration and a repetition of what the Supreme Court said and what was said way back in 1980, now brought by way of enacted law. Of course, some places there are enlargements. I won't say, it will be unfair for me to say that it is a complete lift. It is not a lift in that sense, because it's expanded the scope in some areas. Interestingly, the scope which was expanded was in areas where it was really required. Now, whether it has attained the purposes for which it was enacted is a different question. If you see, Section 2 is the defining clause as far as this act goes. Now, when we come to Section 2, 2N and 2O, this defining sections 2N and 2O are the heart of this legislation. If we read 2N, it provides a definition of sexual harassment. And this sexual harassment, why I say that the scope was somewhat enlarged, because within its scope, it included, if you see, read N, it says, sexual harassment includes any one or more of the following unwelcome acts or behavior, whether directly or by implication. So implication is also included. Namely, physical contact and advances, demand or request for sexual favors, or making sexually colored remarks, or showing pornography, or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. So the definition is all comprehensive in a particular way. So to that extent, it has enlarged the definition, tried to cover within its ambit everything that is possible. When it says unwelcome physical, verbal, and non-verbal conduct, so non-verbal conduct will also include gestures, all kinds of gestures. So therefore, the definition becomes somewhat enlarged than what was at that point of time stated in Vishaka. When you read in Vishaka, you will not find all these aspects. Then what it also did, 2O for that matter, because I say the heart lies here in the definition of a workplace. Now, this workplace definition has definitely been expanded as far as the act is concerned. The workplace includes, the first clause talks about any department, organization, undertaking, establishment, enterprise, institution, office, branch, or unit which is established, owned, controlled, wholly or substantially financed, and funds provided directly or indirectly by the appropriate government, or the local authority, or a government company, or a corporation, or a cooperative society. So it has the entire gamut in terms of institutions which are related to the government, financed by the government, or there is some sort of governmental control. And it has also brought in within its ambit the societies. Interestingly, the second part is the horizontal legislation part. The horizontal part comes in two. Any private sector organization or a private venture, undertaking, enterprise, institution, establishment, society, trust, non-governmental organization, NGOs, unit, or service providers carrying on commercial, professional, vocational, educational, entertainment, industrial, health services, or financial activities, including production, supply, sale, distribution, or service. So I am also covered. Good. Professionals, we are all covered. Because our offices also these kind of things happen. Nobody is above this. This patriarchy has touched everyone in a different way. This mindset of ours is all pervasive. And I will give examples when I go further on down the line. You will see that it is replete all over. No place has been spared. Then it goes on to hospitals, nursing homes, sports institutes, stadiums, sport complexes, competition or games venues, whether residential or not, used for training, sport, other activities relating thereto. Any place visited by the employee arising out of or during the course of employment, including transportation by the employer for undertaking such journey. I stop here for a while, my lord, for a while. Now, this 5 is a place where a class action suit could have come, or an action suit should have come in relation to what happened to Nirbhaya, in relation to the employer. This act had already come into place in a way by way of the guidelines. And then a dwelling place or house, because even your home is not, safe as far as domestic labor is concerned. We have domestic servants who come here. There are umpteen number of cases which we find in courts where the employer has molested a domestic servant or her daughter or somebody who's been associated with her. Umpteen number of cases which come every day. Unorganized sector. Now this is it. In relation to a workplace means an enterprise owned by individuals or self-employed workers engaged in production or sale of goods or providing service of any kind whatsoever, and where the enterprise employs workers, the number of such workers is less than 10. So it has included everybody. So to that extent, yes, this act is much more comprehensive, but it should not have taken them from 1980 to 2013, which means nearly how many years? 20 and 13, around 33 years to come to this, when they knew about all this from the very beginning. So having said that, interestingly, what Nirbhaya did, Nirbhaya brought changes. They realized that they have to bring this in place. This was brought in place, but also came in place certain amendments in 2013 along with this act in the Indian Penal Code. So if you people open the Indian Penal Code and come to 354, which was only one section earlier, 354 saw a whole mass scale amendment. And in that mass scale amendment, 354A, if you open, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will read, all those 1, 2, 3, 4 are this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which you see as sexual harassment out here. Verbatim. 354A is a verbatim pick in relation to this, which has brought in culpability in relation to these offenses. This has been categorized as offenses, and not only as offenses, with culpability, with enhanced punishment. As far as clauses 1 to 3 are concerned in 354A, if my memory serves me right, the sentences will run to a period between 1 year to 3 years, with fine or with both. And as far as 4 is concerned, in relation to 4, which probably relates to passing sexually colored remarks, you people will have to check the concerned Bear Act, which we call as Gutka. I'm not having it at the moment. So 4 talks about sexually colored remarks, if my memory serves me right. Now that 4 relates to an enhanced sentence, a lesser sentence is contemplated there, where the sentence is for a period of 1 year. But interestingly, 354 then thereafter, because Nirbhaya and this entire scenario impelled the legislature to wake up from its slumber, and it also enacted 354 B, C, D, which involves offenses which are of a graver nature: stalking, disrobing a woman in public, all this, the Draupadi kind of an offense, which still happens in this country, unfortunately. If you people read the newspapers, I have read in the newspapers so many times that caste conflicts in villages where A lower caste woman is being disrobed. So Draupadi's situation still exists in this country. Draupadi is still alive in a different way, unfortunately, because our mindset doesn't change. It is coming down from there. I remember when straight away what comes to my mind. For instance, Phulan Devi's case comes to my mind. Phulan Devi, that case happened because of this. It was a case of, it started with molestation, it started with harassment, it started with rape, disrobing in the village. So that mindset is yet to go, if you look at it in that sense. So these Draupadis keep happening all over. Though Mahabharatas don't happen, but Draupadi happens right through. And just like that council which took place at the time of Mahabharata, we just sit and watch and don't act. Because our conscience doesn't get shaken till something really shocking happens. Now, having said that, so 2013 again becomes a watershed in a way that this comes in. Nirbhaya happens, and Nirbhaya brings in those changes in 354, which to a certain extent, I would say, is a progressive step. It is taking care of certain issues. But at the same time, interestingly, all this happens, but still, has that really been achieved? Did these legislations and did Supreme Court's judgment in Vishaka really achieve its objective? Why do I keep asking this question? Because something happened thereafter. In USA, in 2006, a lady by the name of Tarana Burke one day decided to express her anguish in relation to harassment on a social media platform. But it was a small kind of a scenario where it was expressed and it got lost somewhere down the line. But interestingly, though she's considered to be the originator of that movement, thereafter, in 2017, if I am not mistaken, 17 or so, this movement again saw a resurgence of a very different kind. And this happened in relation to the field of cinema. There was a very famous filmmaker by the name of Weisenstein. And there was this actress by the name of Alicia Moriano, if I am not mistaken. She decided to write about her experiences of sexual harassment and molestation by this man on social media. This movement is now characterized and known all over the world as the Me Too movement. All of you must have heard about it. This Me Too movement saw the first resurgence was seen in terms of Weisenstein. It is also called now, in fact, it is termed as the Weisenstein effect, because it is directed against the rich and powerful people who had the opportunities and the abilities to do something like that. So in the field of media, once Moriano came up with this for the first time, there were subsequently, it was followed by some 60, 70 odd incidents, which was reported that it happened with all these women as well. So they started expressing themselves. So this expression resulted ultimately where these allegations were raised against him. Those allegations were investigated upon and charges were leveled against him. And in fact, thereafter he got convicted also of it. What happened because of that was that this started mushrooming as a movement all over the world, and India was also not left far behind. And this Me Too movement took a shape because this Me Too movement talked about harassment of faced by women and sexual harassment, especially faced by women in workplaces, women found after a long time a voice to express themselves, because earlier that expression was not coming forth because of various reasons, despite the fact that laws are in place, despite the fact that the Supreme Court also took cognizance of the fact and brought in guidelines which then thereafter resulted in legislation. Still people were not coming forth because women found it to be very difficult to express in public, because one, it entailed the expression, it entailed an element where they found it to be essentially, as I had earlier said, they found themselves not only to be victims but also traumatized and also stigmatized at the same time by this patriarchal setup of ours, by this patriarchal mindset of ours. They get castigated. Not only do they get castigated, they get stigmatized. They are considered as women with loose morals when they come out. And all this formed a kind of a deterrence in pursuing the issue. So therefore, and surprisingly, because when I look into this act also talks about conciliation. Wow, how can there be a conciliation? If there is a challenge to basic human dignity, can there be a conciliation about it? If I'm not mistaken, because this is something which is a little disturbing to me, because the act provides for conciliation. Section 10, complaint of sexual harassment, is section 9, and section 10 talks about conciliation. How can there be conciliation in relation to this? You see, because why conciliation is provided? Because we are again catering to that same mindset. We are catering to that same mindset. Therefore, conciliation. And what will happen in conciliation? Everybody will try and tell the woman, "Why drop it? Why, Baba? You will go to court. You will get besmirched. Your name will get besmirched. Why do you want to do all this? Settle it with the person concerned. We will see to it that he pays you compensation. We will see to it that he doesn't work with you. We'll transfer him somewhere. Okay, okay, he's apologized. Finish it on this occasion." This is all what happens in conciliation. We'll tell him to say sorry to you. Is that the answer? Why should this happen in the first place? So therefore, I don't know. This is my opinion. It's purely my opinion. Maybe somebody has a different take on it. But this is my opinion that this conciliation it doesn't appeal to me. And number one. And number two, when we talk about the fact that, we have a place as far as the act is concerned, it is talking about an internal complaints committee. We are talking about the fact that it will be headed by a woman. It will have 50% of the people in that who will be women. We will also see to it that some external NGO is also brought in place. All that is fine. But still, does it do substantive justice? Is a question we need to ask. And especially when we have, by way of legislation, we have said that 354A, all these issues which you are talking of out here are offenses which have been made punishable with terms of sentences and with fine or otherwise. So then, keeping that in view, can there be a conciliation here? So these are questions which one needs to answer. There can be divergence of opinion. Yes, there can be instances where false cases are being filed. There can be instances, there can be a viewpoint which says that, yes, you see, it's not harassment from one side alone. Here are laws which have been made to make women secure in workplaces, but it has made men also insecure, because we have day-to-day interactions with women. I was hearing the last part of that interesting lecture which was being given before me, and this was one aspect which was, in fact, voiced by the previous speaker, where I heard something that, boys come and hug women, and women come and hug boys, and they find it uncomfortable, and it could be construed otherwise. Yes, there could be situations like that. I don't discount that. But by and large, statistics say, by and large, that women generally have been reluctant to come to the fore, and they come to the fore only and only if a scenario pushes them to that extent. And it is generally seen, it is not a kind of a thumb rule, but generally seen that people with power and wealth who are in a position to create a situation like that, they are the persons who are generally seen by and large in a Me Too situation. I'm talking about Me Too situations. This is statistics which says that, though there is no, it is not an opinion which is being expressed by me. But yes, there can be instances where there are false implications. And yes, once a situation like this happens, what is the inbuilt mechanism in relation to that? That some thought needs to be given. Yes, definitely it needs to be given. Because once a name gets tarnished, it is very difficult to get back that name. Nothing on earth can get back the person to status quo ante. It can't happen. So, considering that damage, something needs to be factored in. Laws will develop over a period of time. And that is why you find now, for instance, when I was talking about that Me Too situation, so this Me Too situation saw its scenario in India as well. And one after the other, names started tumbling from the closets. The first case that I remember, which triggered this in India, was that of Tanushri Datta. She made an allegation in terms of this against Nana Patekar. And she claimed that in 2008 it happened in relation to a film, if I remember correctly, some On OK Please or something was that film. On the sets of that film, she claims that he harassed her. She made a complaint in 2008 to the Cinema and Directors Association. They did not take it seriously. They did not do anything about it. Interestingly, no committee was constituted, despite the fact that there were directions from the Supreme Court. That is why I say that when you look into the working of the law, there is much to be asked for. There is much in askance. So she says that nothing happened in 2008. She again made a complaint subsequently to the concerned police station. The police station also put a quietus to it. And then she expressed herself in this Me Too fashion in somewhere around 2017 or 18. And a furor was created. Interestingly, the Cinema Association testified to the fact that they had received a complaint and they did nothing about it. They came on record on that. And then subsequently, post 2018, that FIR was registered. So women suffer in anguish because they can't come through. They don't come through. So what did this Me Too movement do? This Me Too movement gave a voice to them, number one. Two, not only did it give a voice, it also, to a certain extent, brought them out of their closets, made them feel empowered to a certain extent that it gave them this, that you are not the victims. You are the victims, but you are not the ones to be stigmatized. There is no stigma about it. Speak about it. And surprisingly, the number of women who spoke about it shows that all is not well. We as a society are ailing. There is something wrong with us. And we need redress. And just by making laws alone is not enough. You see, laws have been there from times immemorial. I still remember having read something in law school when I was in a class of criminology, which was taught by the famous Dr. Menon. He used to be my teacher, Madhav Menon. He had quoted one example somewhere in UK, where in England they had decided to bring in stringent laws because the element of, when gatherings, pickpocketings used to take place. So one of the laws which was enacted was that they will hang pickpockets. And he quoted an instance wherein he said that the hanging was going on and a crowd had gathered and the pickpockets were still at work. So laws make no difference. You can go around making enough laws. We have enough laws to combat. Laws is only that are there in place, but the working of the law is based on many other factors. And in case of this kind of a scenario, what we require is a change of mindset. How will that mindset change? That mindset will change through our homes, how we treat our women, how we treat our sisters, how we treat our mothers, how we treat our wives, how our children look and imbibe, the manner in which do we treat them on an equal plane, do we talk in terms of equality. In a brother sister relation also, if you see, it happens with me also. I am an elder brother, I am a younger brother sister. I feel that she should listen to all that I say, but she rebels. And when she rebels, I feel that my ego is hurt. Somehow I feel that, I've got a kind of a parental relationship on her and she should listen to all that I say. And she feels that no, all that you say is not right. So similarly, so there are these kind of situations which happen in every families of different kind, wife and husband. You may not see eye to eye, maybe, but just because you are a husband, it is not that I will force my way through. Of course, so it comes from our domestic place. It comes from there. So the beginning has to be made by us from here. Even our mindsets change, we will look at it from a different point of view. It not only goes for men, it all goes for women also. You see, after all, human relations will involve interaction of both the sexes. That is the law of nature. In fact, in the previous lecture, I heard something very interesting because there was something which was said by the previous speaker, and I found it very interesting because she said, when it is a no, it means a no. You see, after all, human relations involves the fact that you as youngsters and you are in those ages where you will like to interact with the opposite sex, and it's a part and parcel of life. So she said that, look, when a person says no, it should be a definite no as far as you are concerned. There's a very interesting judgment of the Delhi High Court which people should read. That is called Mahmood Farooqi versus State, delivered by the Delhi High Court, where the Delhi High Court, I don't know, the Delhi High Court said a feeble no can be construed as an yes. Now, how many of you agree with it? It's a food for thought. Because when this is put to me, what I feel is that how do you distinguish between a distinctive no and a feeble no? What what is that subjective analysis? How can you come to an objective kind of a qualification to that? So therefore, I am in support with what the previous speaker said. A no means a no. There's nothing called a feeble no. And I am in disagreement with what the judgment says of the Delhi High Court. But please read that judgment. That makes an interesting read. It is called Mahmood Farooqi versus State. Farooqi was acquitted by that judgment. He was convicted by the trial court. He was acquitted by the judgment, and then subsequently the Supreme Court also dismissed the SLP. That's apart. Now coming back to that Me Too phenomenon. So the Me Too phenomenon did a few of these things, but was the Me Too phenomenon completely justified? As a student of law, you will have to ask these questions. I, as a student of law, also ask these questions to myself. What was wrong with the Me Too movement? And some of the feminists also, reputed feminists, also have a problem with this Me Too movement. What is the problem? The problem is that it does not follow the procedure established by law or the due process of law. Why do I say that? You see, even before this Me Too movement, during the course of the Me Too movement, there was this academic, this student who was doing research in one of the law schools, I think, Jindal Law School or one of these law schools. I'm forgetting her name. She created a list. It is famous as the list. And she was not a resident of India. She had come from US, and then thereafter she moved on to Singapore or somewhere. That list, according to her, was a compilation of all the academics whom she felt were sexual predators. She made a list of them, and she circulated that list amongst her friends. Her opinion was that I was only cautioning it among my friends that they should be aware and beware of these sexual predators. But the damage was done. It was an unverified list. That list was based on hearsay, because by no stretch of imagination did the list of academics comprise all those people under whom she had worked. So she based that list on what other people had told her or what she had heard of, and it was a list of that kind, which also did immense damage to many of the persons who were named in it, who had nothing to do with her and who were not involved in that incident. In fact, one or two of them subsequently filed cases and got exonerated. But the damage was done, because here no due process was followed, no procedure established by law was followed. Similarly, when you come up on television and talk in terms of allegations, you raise allegations where a point of view is that you did not do it at that instance. Now you are coming back after so many years, and then you are trying to put the clock backwards and say that this happened at that point of time. There is no way to verify, there is no way to do anything. So to that extent, procedure established by law or due process of law as seen in the US was not followed, is one of the major criticisms of this movement. Though this movement has achieved a lot otherwise as well. It has empowered women. It has given them a voice. It has brought them out of the closets. So it has both sides of the coin. To the extent, if you people recollect, even a minister had to resign, MJ Akbar. He retaliated by filing a defamation case. So now, a scenario has happened where the person who made the allegations, instead of a case being registered on the basis of what she said or he said at that point of time, now there is a case which is being filed by way of a defamation, which is to be defended by them. So that defamation suit still goes on. That is one part. There were situations where people had to resign from various posts. I remember there was this phantom, this film making company called Phantom, which had to be disbanded because there were allegations against all of them. So it has its own fallouts. But what I'm trying to put forth is that why this movement at all? If these laws were adequate, if Vishaka had attained what it wanted to do, and subsequently this legislation was all comprehensive and had attained what it wanted to do, followed by legislation which happened subsequently as amendments in the penal code, if they had achieved all they had to do, there was no need for a movement like Me Too. But that Me Too movement, in a way, it went as if, it was fodder catching fire. That is the manner in which it got publicized, which means that implementation of these laws, which also means that these laws, the adequacy of these laws, I'll go a step further. Why search only in the fields of, media and otherwise? We had a situation even in the Supreme Court, for that matter, where there were allegations leveled against none less than the Chief Justice, the incumbent Chief Justice at that point of time. And when that was done, the manner in which the Supreme Court dealt with the issue also had a lot of questions were asked, where internally they came to a decision and where the judge sat as a judge of his own cause. Questions were put at that point of time also. So therefore, all I am saying, I am not offering any kind of view of mine in relation to this, but what I am trying to say is that all is not well. All is not well. We are, as a society and as a nation, there we are ill. Something needs to be done. And something needs to be done beyond this. The issues are beyond this. That iniquity needs to be addressed. Interestingly, women constitute 50% of our population. How many of them are representing us in the parliament? They are clamoring for reservation in parliament in terms of adequate representation. They're not even 10%. They are asking for a 10% reservation. Even that is not being done. So that is the level of iniquity that is there. Let us be fair. Let us make it a level playing field. No. Why this discrimination? So I ended with this. I think I'm probably will be overshooting my time. I can go on and on. So all I am saying is that I ended with this note that much needs to be done. Much rests on the shoulders of you youngsters. Take up the challenge and wake each one of us from this slumber. Wake us from this slumber. That is the need of the hour. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting topic. I enjoyed myself. I don't know whether you people did. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative session. With your due permission, we would like to open the session for questions.
Please do.
Our first question is, what according to you are the major changes regarding sexual harassment, and what are the changes according to you? What changes are to be made according to you?
As I said, change in mindset. More than laws, change in mindset. Laws are adequate. There is enough legislation. There is enough law. But what it needs is a change in mindset. What it needs is proper implementation of those laws. Make it more effective in terms of implementation. That is not happening. You need to sensitize the investigating agencies. You need to sensitize the adjudicating agencies. And at the same time, we need to have a change in mindset.
Will POSH Act be applicable to schools and colleges?
The act concerned, yes, why not? The definitions are all inclusive.
Thirdly, sir, in your opinion, what should a female intern do when she faces sexual harassment at chambers or firm? Should one report each and every incident, or just report when it's severe or grave?
You report when it is a challenge to your dignity. Don't spare the person. When your dignity is challenged, it needs to be brought to light. It is only then that mindsets will change. You should feel secure in that environment. You should not feel that you are there because of the fact that you belong to this weaker section. It should not be that any concessions are given to you because you are a female. You should not look forth for any concessions. And at the same time, anything which challenges your dignity needs to be reported immediately.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite Professor Cheshta Daria to deliver the vote of thanks. Over
Thank
to
you. Special thanks to Cheshta because I wouldn't have been here but for her Cheshta. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to, sir, I would like to actually thank you for a while. Formal vote of thanks I would like to give you. Our honorable guest, Senior Advocate Mr. Hariharan, our respected faculty members, our Dean Professor Rashmi Salpekar, and all the participants. It is a privilege to us to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. And I, on behalf of Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies, I extend my sincere thanks to sir. In spite of such a busy schedule, as we all are aware of, sir, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time and accepting our invitation. And in fact, we look forward for hearing more from you in the upcoming events at our college. And this was really a very informative session for all of us. We were enlightened with your knowledge on this topic of sexual harassment at workplace, starting from Ramayana to Mahabharata, then from Constitution to the criminal law, from Banwari Devi to Nirbhaya, and from 1980s to 2013 till Me Too movement. I mean, you've given a deep insight to this subject, and all our students are really inspired and they are encouraged by the words said by you. Thank you once again, sir. We're really thankful to you. Thank you,
ma'am. Thank you very much. It was a very entertaining session. It has brought me back to my old days. It feels as if I am young again. Don't go by my beard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
with
so much.
this, we end our session for today. Hoping to see you all tomorrow. Good luck. Take care.
At what time, Simrat?
Ma'am, 4.
4 o'clock. Okay. Thank you so much. And congratulations to the team for this successful